Aloha, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Warrior Women in the World of Entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Kolo, and today's guest is a fellow warrior woman in every meaning of the words. April Parks is a BJJ black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and that's under Carlos Machado. And then she's also a multiple-time Jiu-Jitsu world champion, a full-time worker in social work in an urban setting, a mother of four, a wife, and a badass warrior woman entrepreneur with the foundation of her business, Grappling Getaways. So, April, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today. And I really appreciate you coming onto this podcast.
Thank you for asking me, and thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, for sure. So, I know a little bit about you. I know you grew up in Syracuse, or at least upstate New York area. Could you just give us a little bit more background on yourself and also just how Brazilian Jiu Jitsu specifically became such a big part of your life that led you into even creating your own business that revolved around it?
Wow, that's a really long story, so I'll try to be as concise as possible. I am a super proud Syracuse native, born, raised here, went to a school called East Syracuse Manoa High School. I was a track and field athlete and a soccer player. I continued my track career at Syracuse University. So I'm Syracuse through and through. Graduated from Syracuse University and started to work in the Syracuse City School District, where I am still currently working. I have almost 20 years in the district in various capacities, from social work to teaching. And it was in my late 20s that I discovered jujitsu, after having all four of my children and really kind of feeling that my athletic days and career were behind me, only to find that it had just begun. And that's where I found my greatest passion, which is Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. And I also found my business, which, if you had asked me that, in my teens or in my 20s or even in my early 30s, you'll ever think you'd be a business owner, or are you interested in having your own business? I'd be like, no, I don't think so. And so it all just organically developed. And here I find myself, all of those things.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And definitely wasn't to rush your story because obviously our foundations are a huge part of kind of creating us. But I just wanted to get to that part of you finding jujitsu because again, you've worked in social work in the urban setting for how long? When did you start that? And you're still in it, right? Full time?
Yeah, that's correct. About 7 years ago now, I began working in social work in the capacity of a social work assistant in the Syracuse School District. And it's exactly as it sounds. We're just working with communities and families, finding resources and connecting families with things that they possibly have a need for, whether that's food, clothing, or shelter, and supporting children with all kinds of needs, including mental health.
How did you get involved in that? What was the drive in order to start working in that arena?
I was teaching at Syracuse Academy of Science. I was a US history teacher, and I actually left New York State for about a year and had moved to California. And when I moved to California, this is kind of a long, intricate story, but in New
That's
York
okay.
State, you have to have your master's degree in teaching to continue teaching. And
Mhm.
when I left New York State, that was the year that I had to complete my master's degree in order to maintain my New York State certification. But I never thought I was coming back to New York. So when I left to go to California, I did not complete that degree. I was pursuing another avenue of my career. And upon returning, I had a degree in education and I applied for a job in social work assistant because you did not need New York State teacher certification, which mine had expired. And it led me to this career path, which I'm still serving in today and has been a real source of fulfillment for myself.
Yeah. And I know you definitely have, like, we had a conversation before even this podcast today, which I very much so appreciated. Cause like I said, I know your time is busy and you definitely are a warrior woman of a different kind because you just don't let anything stop you. And, you've also learned to basically control that a little bit more as well so that you don't burn yourself out. But it's still, you are just an exemplary example of what hard work can get you. And it's something that I think our listeners also need to hear with creating your own business and also still working a full-time job. So you said you got into jujitsu, which we're going into this part of it because again, your business Grappling Getaways is with jujitsu. Can you explain a little bit more about actually what Grappling Getaways is?
Well, I think something interesting, and I love what you just touched upon and how organic this podcast can be. And in our conversation before, I think it segued nicely into this kind of back and forth conversation between yourself and I, which people do enjoy listening to conversations. Um, when I was younger, I had a highly entrepreneurial nature.
Mhm.
So I grew up in a rural setting, had cornfields in my backyard, had a military father who basically really ingrained in me a really hard work ethic. And so I think this is going to tie into later parts of the story, which maybe is interesting to add in. Um, from a really young age, the expectation was like my bed would be perfect. My room would be perfectly neat. There wasn't like a dent in my sheets, in my blanket. So everything was kind of perfect. We would be driving on the road on the way home and he would open the car door, literally 10, 11 years old. Nowadays, you'd call it probably child abuse. But back in the day, my dad was like, all right, get out of the car and run home. I'll meet you there. And so I would have this kind of like physical work ethic. And I also had like this just work ethic in general of like making things as perfect as I possibly could. Not a perfectionist mentality, but a really just put the work in and you'll get good results. And I think he did it in a really smooth way where I didn't realize that I was putting in all this hard work and that it was really impacting who I was as a human being and who I
Yeah.
would be down the road. But I understood that if I did something, I was supposed to do it my best. So he would also take me to a farm and we would go from like the age of like 9 years old. It was called the Wilcox Farm. And we would work side by side. My dad worked on the railroad. He retired from the railroad about, I want to say about 10 years ago now. And that's a really hard job. So if you've ever known anybody that's worked on the railroad, they destroy their shoulders from pounding spikes, their knees hurt, their back hurts. Like he's a really hard worker. So he's working like 60-hour weeks and then he's coming home on the weekend and he's working with me on a farm. And so he would work side by side with me, picking corn, picking beans, picking tomatoes, hoeing fields. And then at the end, it was really hard work. I'd be like, Dad, maybe can we go home now? Because I'm really tired. I have blisters on my hands. And he would be like, no, it's okay. We only have 1 hour left. And when we would leave, he would give me his money that he worked for. And he would say, now you just have to save half of this. And so I kind of understood from like a really early age, the concept of, capitalism, right? As much work as you can put into something is really as much money as you can get out of it. And from that, I just always thought, well, I want to come up with ideas to be able to create like this income. And I found really creative ways of doing that as a young child, which is pretty interesting. So I worked on a farm. Then I started to compete in track and field. I know you heard that from my previous podcast.
Yep.
And I found myself, excelling rapidly. My family didn't have a lot of money at the time. And I had travel expenses. I'm like, how am I going to pay for these travel expenses? And my dad's like, well, we have a lawnmower. Take it around to everybody in the neighborhood. Take it to every business that you can find. And so I would just show up, 14, 15-year-old girl. And I'm like knocking on doors. I'm calling businesses. And I really created a little landscaping business for myself. It wasn't on the books. It wasn't anything I was paying taxes for. Yes, I can admit that now. I was only 14 at the time.
Yeah, of course.
But I was making really good money. Like I would be making anywhere from like $200 to $500 one day a week. I would take a whole Sunday and I would mow all of these residential properties. I would mow corporate properties and I funded my own track and field career.
That's incredible. Going back to even just kind of talking about that, how it made so much money, that's because you kept at it too and you made yourself present, which is definitely something that is still within entrepreneurship and work ethic today. But it's so easy sometimes to give up when you don't necessarily see the results. But again, it's a numbers game. And that's something that I too am also learning to accept, because you're not always going to get those clients. So even as a young person, 14 years old, you said, you were able to just continue. Like you didn't let anything stop you. You're like, didn't expect anything on that one anyway. But how did you find that you kept getting clients? Like what was the primary thing that helped you?
You know what? I do think there's like multiple pieces that go along with that.
Mm-hmm.
One, I do think it's a numbers game. There were people that I asked that said no, but for every person that says no, there's a possible yes out there. So I really truly believe that. I also believe that there are people that want to help. Right? There are businesses out there that at one time were not so successful, but somebody helped them. And I always keep that in mind when I'm trying to do business with someone. I know that somebody helped them grow, and I'm hopeful that they want to help me grow so that the next person that's coming along, I can help grow. And it's like this awesome system of support, right? So that's kind of like my mentality was, well, if this person says no, I'm going to keep asking. And hopefully there's a yes out there for me. And, I think that positive mindset also brought me a lot of yeses.
Gotcha. So it's interesting though, because you had that business that you created again when you were 14, but there was at one point you thought in your life, you're like, well, I'm not going to own my own business going forward. So
Right. I think because when you think about like a business, this was like something that I had that was like not organized, right? Like it wasn't organized. I didn't have employees. I wasn't an employee. It was mine. I wasn't paying taxes. I viewed business very much as like this intimidating thing that was for like rich people.
yep.
Like, I don't know any other way to say it. Like all these wealthy people have these businesses. And I think, in my teens and in my early 20s, I didn't even know anything about that, how you would go about starting a business, what that means, what it entails. It seemed so elitist or out of my reach. Like me, a business owner, how could that be possible?
Yeah. And
Right.
especially that it takes money to make money.
Right, right. And especially when you graduate from college and you're like in this huge student loan debt or whatever, you're like, wait a second, like
Oh yeah. Yep.
I don't have money to do this right now. So yeah, there's a lot of things that make business really intimidating. And it's just like most things, the more that you know about it and the more that you understand, it's really just it's easier than it looks, the more
Mhm.
palatable it becomes, and the step-by-step process that you take just becomes one that you just have to commit to.
Absolutely. So let's jump forward then to when you created Grappling Getaways. At what point did you start that? Were you already a jiu-jitsu black belt? And again, just how did this all kind of come to be? Loaded
So
question, I know.
in 2015, I was a purple belt. I had won a blue belt adult world championship. I was seeking a purple belt adult world championship. And we were training for the world championships. So a group of women and myself had decided that we were going to come together to train. There was a definite need, right? So if you look at supply and demand, I didn't really realize the demand was so high, and the supply was so low, right? And so it was kind of like this perfect, uh, fertile scenario that was waiting to happen. In upstate New York or across New York in general, there was not a lot of jujitsu. In New York City, there was jujitsu, but when people think about New York, they go, "Oh, you live in New York City." No, we live anywhere from 6 to 5 hours from New York City.
Yeah.
We are not anywhere close. So if you were looking for high level girls to train with, or even another girl to train with, you would be driving hours to do so. And so a collective of girls decided maybe we could start training together for these big tournaments and prepare for them together, just like a training camp. And we came together in 2015. We had great results. We started to go to tournaments with each other and really support each other, whether it was sharing, hotel rooms financially, bringing each other to events, coaching each other. We really bonded. And as we created this experience, there were other girls that were reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, can we join in?" And when they started to ask to join in, we really realized the capacity that we were doing it in, and also the space that we were doing it in, was just not feasible for us to continue in that space, that we needed to expand. Um, at the time, I had flown to Mexico, and Itzel Basua Aguilar is actually the first female black belt in Mexico. And she had welcomed me into her home. And it was just an amazing experience. She was a female school owner. I was so inspired by her. And I said, "What can I do to repay you?" And she goes, "You can like fly me up to New York so I can see fall for the first time." And I said, "Done." So that fall came around, and all the girls that wanted to come, I let people know Itzel's going to be flying from Mexico. I'm bringing her up for this camp. And then all of a sudden, when I posted it online, we had girls from France, we had girls from Canada, we had girls from all of the United States say, "We want to come train." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? This isn't just upstate New York. This is, people want to come from everywhere because they want to train, and they want to train with some of the best people, but they don't have access to them." So before we knew it, I had to change locations again. I was like, "Why don't we do like a big cabin rental and bring our own mats and set them up and pack these girls into houses like sardines?" And boom, Grappling Getaways was born. Everybody came. There wasn't a profit for the first couple camps because we weren't looking at it in terms of making a profit. We were looking at it in terms of providing a service. that we all needed and we were all sharing. And before we knew it, at the end of the camp, everyone's like, you need to like charge money for this. You guys like busted your asses and you didn't make anything. You probably lost money on this. I'd be willing to come and I would pay this for this. I would pay double for this. And so we really began to have those conversations of, if we are going to do this, and it is such a tremendous amount of work, we're going to have to charge a little bit. So at least we can cover all the work that we're putting in. And then it does continue to evolve from there.
Yeah, that's a great. I love hearing stories like that because it's just that law of attraction. It's
Yes.
people hear about, just it's good energy and just what you have, and just other people want to find that. It's exactly what you said. And it's really cool that they found out even from all over the world. And it's just nice because we were talking about this before too, about finding the value within each other as
Yeah.
women and as women, just warriors. There's so many things that can happen. Like, sometimes you grow up with like girl bullying or just, bullying in general, and it's just kind of tearing each other down to try and best each other. And listen, competition's one thing and it's great to have, but having that negativity associated with it is just all too common and just what tends to take over. So it's nice when you find a group of other women, especially, that just build each other up. You just have a really good time. There's no negativity in that sense. If there is, you openly talk about it. And I think that's also something that martial arts brings to you, and I think there's a whole other, like I said, law of attraction that brings people to that. And you learn very quickly to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations, especially in jiu-jitsu, because you were
Right.
just placed in uncomfortable situations right off the bat, safely, but
Well,
go
it's,
ahead.
I mean, so much of what you just said is all like facts, facts, facts.
Mhm.
For many people, they didn't have a great high school experience, or they had those mean girls. And it was so refreshing to have a household somehow full of all supportive, constructive, amazing women that genuinely wanted the best for every single person in the room. It was like, how did we find you all? And what we've done maybe 10, 15 camps since then. I don't even know. I don't keep track. And every single time we're waiting for like the toxic person to show up, and they never do. We're like, I don't know how we keep doing it. How do we keep attracting just the best people? And then to also comment upon, the scariness of it, or stepping outside of your comfort zone, those kinds of things. There were girls that literally had told me after the fact, I almost turned my car around like 5 times. I almost didn't come. I was having a panic attack in the car. I knew I really wanted to come. I had already paid for it, but I'm like, what if I don't like these girls? What if we're stuck in a house with these girls for 3 days and I hate them all? And everyone's like, I'm so glad that I didn't listen to like my mind playing tricks on me, and I took a risk. And because of that risk, I have made friends for life.
That's amazing. And so definitely something inspiring to hear and to live by. And I think what happens is we get into our own head because, again, we just let fear take over, but it's also not realizing that everything is within. If it's a good program and you have a good instructor and a good host, it's going to be a progression. They're not going to start you off like, like throwing you in the deep end. Like, here's how you swim, here's how you paddle. We'll make our way slowly but surely into the deep end if that's where you want to go. And if you want to hang out in the shallow end for a little while, it's fine. But we are going to try and progress you into a point like safely and healthily. And again, if you're running a good program, which it sounds like you very much are, especially in martial arts, you're going to work people up to it. And again, I think there is a moment of certain people get weeded out if they don't necessarily belong. That doesn't mean anybody who's listening who did turn their car around doesn't belong. It just means maybe you need a little bit more time before you can commit to it. But if it's just more of a negative thing and you're already judging it before you get there, or judging yourself, then maybe you aren't ready for that. And maybe you aren't cut out for it, which is, I think, how you keep ending up with such amazing women, knock on wood there, that work within the program and make it better.
It's true. And I think that we have a really great dynamic, not just with the people that we attract, but also our instructors. So, linking the fact that I was a high school teacher, I am 40 years old. So many of the women that are coming are the age of my students that I have taught for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Social work, you are trained very much so to make people feel comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so we have a really great way, and we have a depth of experience with really greeting people like we've known them forever. And people are like, I feel like this is my family and it's day one. Well, yeah, because this is the experience that we want to provide. We are not exclusive. We are very much inclusive. We have multiple professionals that work with us. Katie Hooven she's at every camp. She's an amazing instructor. She's a brown belt of John Donaher's. She's an engineer. And so she links up with a lot of the other professionals. We have a professional chef that comes and does our cooking, and she is just fantastic as well. So we just have a variety of people from a variety of different fields. And because of that, I think that we have a very well balanced just general environment and general culture and climate.
And sounds like a completely female staff at the moment, which is pretty amazing as well. Is that correct?
It is a female staff. When we do co-ed camps, we are looking to bring in some co-ed instructors. Although what's really interesting is that we still attract men, and men are like, we don't care whether we learn from a female or a man. And we do think that that's really great progress for us in our jiu-jitsu community. And we did just employ a male photographer for our last camp, and his wife had attended the camp, and he was absolutely amazing. His name is Ty Withrow, and he's just absolutely amazing. Like, we were really happy with how he, just everything, the whole experience. He was perfect for us.
Amazing. And that's the whole thing, right? It's nice that it built up through, again, just female empowerment and all that, but it's not necessarily just for that. It is a nice factor that it comes in with it. But again, I think it's just to live within our power in just a very organic way. It's not trying to push it onto anybody. It's just, you are who you are, and you're incredible as you are. And it's going to attract those who understand that the talent and the skill and the knowledge that you have acquired and that you can share is just purely, I don't want to keep saying incredible. It's just purely educational. And it doesn't matter, again, whether you're male, female, non-binary, whatever you are, like, this is information that could save your life and also just give you a whole different perspective on life and what you can achieve.
Exactly. When Katie and I were doing a summer seminar series last summer, we had these shirts that we want to match each other, which seems really cheesy, and we laugh about all the time now. But we wanted to order the original ones that said "Empowered Women, Empower Women." And we really had a deep conversation about that. And we do tend to be pretty philosophical in nature. We try to really think out what is going to be viewed and perceived as what. And we decided against that shirt, and we bought "Empowered Women, Empower the World." And that means you are empowering men. You are empowering young and old women, men, children, everyone. And so it's really important to not just target women, but to target the world. And that is the impact that we want. To also bring Ty back up again, it's really interesting because we were pretty adamant from the very beginning that we were pretty much only going to employ other female-owned businesses to buy our products and services from, to employ as coaches, to employ as photographers. And as that, as we've evolved as a company and as a brand, I was interviewing Ty, which basically means we're just having a conversation to see if he's a good fit for us. And he said to me, I have a full-time job, but my passion is photography and jiu-jitsu. And you even offering me this opportunity makes me very hopeful that I can pursue my passions and my dreams, which is to move to this full time. And that really touched us because we were like, wow, this has been our goal for women. We can also do this for some men, right? And so we're like, this is pretty cool that we're evolving to the point where we don't have targets and there's like unanticipated inspiration that we are providing.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of like the Amazons and Wonder Woman. Just to get like really nerdy here, it's like the mascara, like the island of just all warrior women. And initially, no men were allowed, but once they started, like, it was pretty incredible because, again, you just got that same energy no matter what. It's the energy of a warrior. It's the energy of somebody who just wants to pursue their dreams and how we can help each other. It's just all too common in professional world where women still today, although we're put in higher positions, we're still not, we were talking about this last time, we still don't get the same pay or same respects sometimes. Not all. There's a lot of places that don't have it that way, but just majority of the time it's still like that, unfortunately. But you know what? We're still here and we're still plugging away. And that's why we create our own businesses. And that way we don't have to necessarily deal with that part of it.
It's so true.
So just going back into the beginning also of Grappling Getaways and the logistics of it. So again, you were just kind of starting, you talked about how you didn't make a profit off of your first couple, right? Or just the first trip.
It was, well, they often say, and this is very true. I mean, it's very true. If you're making money within the first like year or two of owning a business, well, then you've done something special. You've hit the gold mine, because you're going to have to spend money to make money. And again, I said not perfectionist in nature, but I really like a high quality product.
Yep.
I have a lot of experience in event planning. I ran after school programming for my district. And I have planned an awful lot of events ever since I was like 14 years old. And so I used to do fundraising, for Make-A-Wish for my school. I ran our junior prom, and, all the way through this past weekend on Friday, where I hosted a gala for Vera House Recyclable Bully and for Foundation of Christian Athletes in Syracuse, where we were able to raise funds for them. So I really enjoy planning and executing amazing events. And so having that been said, when Grappling Getaways first started, I was absolutely adamant that our product was paramount. I was like, there will be no detail left undeveloped. Our housing will be literally breathtaking. It will be something that anybody would want to stay at. Our instructors will be top notch. Our food menu will be perfect. Our excursions will be perfectly planned out. The itinerary will be flawless. Everybody will have the flexibility to do whatever they want, because it's their money ultimately. So they can participate in everything on our itinerary, or they can choose to do nothing. But either way, they're going to leave having a great time. So we spent money a little bit above and beyond what we actually should have, just to make a really great quality product for about our first 3 camps. After that, and there may be some people that will be listening to this that will understand exactly what I'm saying. Sure. I would have continued to probably lose money until I really wanted to pay my own instructors well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, in order to pay them well, because if it was about me, I would just keep like running these things, and but I'm like, I have to start to change the way that women are paid in our sport if we're ever going to change the future for all of the women that want to potentially make this a career. Because in the male side of our sport for jiu-jitsu, there are countless, thousands and thousands of men making a very good living off of jiu-jitsu right now. At the time, I could list maybe 3 female-owned schools in like the world, right? And very few women were doing seminars or being paid anything that they possibly near what they were worth anyways. And so we had decided that we were going to take a stand. Dominica Blente, very, prominent figure in our sport, young athlete, multiple time world champion at black belt. She had wrote an amazing argument, an article about equal pay for women. And, we all bought into it hook, line, and sinker, not just for ourselves, but for the future people coming down the pike, you know what I'm saying, that we want to get paid.
Yeah.
So, and we decided we're going to be a part of that. So we're going to charge what we're worth, and we're going to make sure that we're paying people well. And that's when we started to make a profit.
Gotcha. But it's funny because it still took you thinking and remembering that, like, not that you forgot other people were involved, but you're like, oh crap, like I need to take care of them. It's like yourself, like you said yourself, you were undervaluing yourself, which I don't want to say we as women as a whole, but we do have a tendency to do that, or just to always put everyone else before us first. And that's okay. But at the same time, we made the same analogy of, even on an airplane, they always say, put your own mask on first so that you can help someone else. Because if you're constantly putting masks on other people, you're no longer going to be able to help them. So it's learning to be able to put ourselves within that as well. Not necessarily all encompassing, but it's like, okay, I need to make sure I'm taken care of so I don't resent the work that I'm doing. So I don't want to stop the work that I'm doing, so I can stay sustainable. And again, like you said, employ other people, well, male, female, again, non-binary, whoever's on that roster or that staff, like you want to make sure that you're taking care of them as well as the clientele. And again, once you started charging a little bit more, you could even better the experience for your clients that you were already making sure was top notch.
Absolutely. People were leaving and saying, I would have paid this. And when you have people telling you charge more,
yeah,
right? It was like, people are like, this is too good. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, I don't want to tell you that because I would love to continue to pay this, but you need to like raise your prices. And I'm like, I know.
That's like when you're instructing somebody in jujitsu and you're like, now I got to correct your form. This is going to be really sucky for me right now, but I have to do this. It's like, and then they do it right. And you're like, oh crap.
Yeah,
But it's the same way. It's just like, I'm going to tell you so that you can better yourself because this is what I love to do. And we want to
it's
make
true.
this better. Sorry, go ahead.
I think when it first started out, before we decided that we wanted to like make a stand, it was really cool for our instructors and our staff to be able to get like a free vacation.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the fact of the matter. We realized some people had to take a Friday off. Some people had to take a Thursday off. Some people had to take Monday through Friday off. And they were not all in positions where they had the time to take off. And so they would be missing money that they would have been paid if they were at work. And that really bothered me because I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. You had a free vacation, you had an awesome time, but now you have to go back to reality where you missed out on $500, $600, $700 for the week that you would have been working. We can't do that. If you're going to miss work, you're going to get paid more or at least the same that you would have got from work. So it was things like that that really made me say, all right, we're going to switch everything up because we got to get these girls paid. And I do know that I'm not crapping on anybody. I'm not competing with anybody. I really don't give a fuck. Like, if you really understand who I am, I'm not thinking about you. I really don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, just to offer a free vacation, like in my opinion, to your staff, your actual instructors, like it's not enough. And I think that is what some camps and some people do. And that's fine. And some people might love that. That's great. But for me, I had a mission. I had a goal, which was to get my instructors paid well. And for the camps that we changed our fees and our rates where we would be making a profit, when I would pay our instructors, they're like, are you sure? What do you mean, am I sure? You earned this. And it was people that all built this up with me. And they're like, we are getting paid now. How cool is that? So now I get a vacation. I'm getting paid. This is like a dream. And the point is that when you create the business that you want, that you're passionate about, you can create your dream and you can live that dream. And that's really what Grappling Getaways is.
Oh man, I love that. Like my heart just like grew 3 sizes. And that's also just a really good sign of a good business owner like yourself. And that's what I aim to be as well, to make sure that you're always taking care of your staff. And when you take care of your staff and the people that are there helping you and working with you, again, it's just going to create more positivity and just more, even more effort than they were giving before, because there's extra motivation. And it's just, again, just being good people. And again, like you said, it's not to shit on anybody else, like any other business owners and any other, thing, because there is a sense of honor as well within martial arts. And that's a thing, it is an honor to be able to teach classes. It is an honor to be able to do those things, and initially without pay sometimes, because again, you're lucky that you get the opportunity to be able to do that. But again, after a certain time, even go ahead.
I think you're bringing up a really stigmatized and controversial issue in martial arts, which is the student is under the master and the student is the apprentice. And even if they're the purple belt or the brown belt or even the new black belt, like they're working for free and they're getting classes in exchange or like whatever. And like, okay, that's good for some time, for some people, for whatever. But I always think about it in terms of that student coming up. You would be paying an employee if this was any other business on the planet. Nobody would be working for free endless hours in exchange for something.
Yeah.
And so, while again, I don't want to completely shit on that dynamic, I do want to say it's not feasible long term. And it's also not doing right by your people long term. And I think that relationship ultimately almost always ends up bad, because what it creates a power structure where one person feels like they've given you everything. And eventually this person just can't eat, but they're working all the time. And they're looking at them like, what are you going to do to help me? And I've done everything to help you. And then it's like, it collapses. And it's just not sustainable, where I really feel like, if you're treating everybody the same and you're like, okay, you are working, I'll pay you this, and then you can pay me your membership fee out of it.
Yeah.
There's ways to rectify this situation. But again, I really do want to always make sure that I take care of my people and I don't take advantage.
Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect. So I want to just go back to also, just because again, Warrior Women in the World of Entrepreneurship is to share stories and to also know that, again, we're here for each other. We're creating the community, but to also know what are the logistics in creating the business. So we have your business, it's successful, not going thus far, and it's growing. What were the steps that you took in order to keep growing? We heard some of it, obviously, like you're like, okay, I need to create this, but how were you so sure that going forward with that it would work out? And when was the moment that you were like, okay, LLC or whatever it is, I'm going to make this a thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the scary part, right? Like you're going to be investing in something that you're not sure about, right?
Yeah,
So if anybody plays the stock market, then you've played this game a lot. Um, so yeah, over the summer of the pandemic when it began, I'm like, we need to make sure everything is like finalized here now. We've been running camps officially. We haven't been making a profit, so we're not doing anything like tax related. We're literally basically all just going in on Airbnbs and sharing expenses, and it's like big trips. Now we're going to make this into a business. And so I had to contact a lawyer, and there are places that you can go online to establish an LLC. If you want to go that route, I say to each their own. I was a person that really wanted a person that had a law degree to guide me, because I wanted it to be very, all the T's crossed and I's dotted, right? And I wanted to
sure.
be walked through the process myself, because I wanted to make sure I understood everything that I needed to do. And if you do that online, you're not necessarily going to get all that information. So we established an LLC, and my lawyer walked me through the process of basically saying, all right, now here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to a bank. You're going to open an account in the business name. You're going to always keep your finances separate from the business's finance. You're going to make sure that you have your website up and running. You're going to seek out an accountant to assist you with your tax purposes. And if you have a lawyer, they're going to be really good to guide you as to some local people that they could reference to as having good reputations, and, maybe possibly that they work with. And that was the initial process of really just making sure that this is a legalized, business with a tax ID number. So
Yep.
you'll be issued a tax ID number, and that's going to be really important, obviously, for your finances.
Was it overwhelming when you had to do that, or because you had like hired the lawyer, you're like, I'm okay?
Because I hired the lawyer, I was okay. So I will tell you that my fiance, we are opening our own school in July here in Syracuse. So that'll be a second business that we own. Go figure.
Yeah.
Um, and he was doing it on his end. He went through an online, website to do the LLC. And all that ended up happening was he went to my lawyer anyways and had him finish the process and walk him through the process, because he felt like he didn't quite get that whole package, the whole experience that I had described. So again, I think that you can save yourself money just by going through a lawyer the first time, in my opinion.
Sure. So there's two things I definitely want to attack there. Number one, what's the name of the business? So you and your fiance are co-founding this next business as well, right? It's
Yes.
VN Jiu-Jitsu, right?
VN Jiu-Jitsu, correct.
Awesome. VIN, V as in Victor, IEN Jiu-Jitsu. And where's that going to be located?
It's going to be in Manlius, New York.
Awesome. So
Which
guys
is
who are
just
listening,
a suburb of Syracuse.
awesome. And if anybody's out there listening to this, please definitely check them out, as well as the Grappling Getaways. I just want to throw that out there. Now, just going back, so there's a lot of people who I'm gonna go into finances a little bit more here, and whatever you're comfortable of talking about. So with Grappling Getaways, you said you were pretty much kind of losing money on that, and then again, hiring a lawyer also costs money. I definitely didn't have enough when I was starting out my business to hire a lawyer or any of that necessarily. I was using what I was getting off of my full-time job, working at a martial arts academy, doing private lessons. Like I didn't have a whole lot, but I knew I just wanted to start. How were you able to, if you don't mind me asking, how were you able to afford doing the Grappling Getaways out of your own pocket and also hiring the lawyer? Was it from your full-time job that you work within social work, or did you have another means in which you wanted to use for that? Can you just go into that a little bit for us?
So with my full-time job, and they oftentimes say you'll be working a couple of jobs to fuel your passion until your passion becomes your full-time job. And I do believe that's going to be the case very soon for me, and also for many people listening. But yeah, so my full-time job would oftentimes front the money for the things that I needed to do for my business. In particular for the lawyer that summer, You usually, if you're a teacher, you'll have 27 paychecks, and you'll get a big paycheck in July that brings you through the summer because you don't get paid.
Yeah.
And so when I got that big paycheck, I was like, this is it. I'm doing it. I'm going to pay for the lawyer. I'm just going to take this risk. And so I just happened to have the money. I believe it was about $680 or something along those lines, which again, I mean, it's a little bit of money, but it's worth not having any legal ramifications. And I do think it takes away a little bit of that fear, because
Sure.
some people do have a fear. Like, am I going to be doing this right? Is the IRS going to come back and like say I did something wrong, or am I doing something illegal? Is my insurance not right? And that would really stress me out too much because
Sure.
I'm a detail person. So I felt like I needed my hand held, and I decided that the investment was worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely good to do. Like I said, I didn't have the money for that, or anything that I was making was just, again, going back into the business and other things. I was lucky enough to have a neighbor, a friend, and also my cousin who is a business owner who had gone through these and also may have used a lawyer on their own. I think one of them used a lawyer, maybe the other one has one too, but they were able to help guide me with all those legal things and kind of just show me where they were pointed to, which is again what I hope
Yes.
this podcast can add if you cannot afford a lawyer at this moment. However, it does not mean that you should not later get one, especially when you get a little bit bigger. And especially if you're like myself in April, you run something that's physical, and no matter what, one day, hopefully it never happens. Like sometimes people like to claim certain things that happen to them through that, but you need to make sure that you are so concrete in what you do, and the legal things that they sign, that it's, null and void. Like it's had nothing to do with it. They signed off. They know what they were getting themselves into. You hope nobody ever gets hurt. But again, sometimes people in this world are just after money and just to destroy things that they thought they wanted to be a part of. And that's unfortunately the business of it. So, having that lawyer is going to definitely add up. But if you don't, again, please listen to all the episodes on this podcast, because you're going to get different resources that'll help you guide you in certain things such as that. So
Yeah. And I
go
love
ahead.
that you mentioned that there's options. Like, yeah, go, if you have to go online and pay the fee online, go online and pay the fee online. And then when you get on your feet and you're moving and grooving, then maybe that's when you get a lawyer, or you have a friend that has experience and they can absolutely hold your hand and walk you through it. And if you need a lawyer, then you can obviously obtain one. So that's always something that you can do later on.
Yep.
And again, grappling getaways, obviously we do not just physical activities, but excursions. So you're
Yeah.
like swimming with sharks. Like that's all I need is for somebody to get like eaten. We're skiing, we're doing ridiculous things, jumping out of planes. So it's like, yeah, I need a lawyer.
You guys are going to have to come out to Hawaii, then do some more shark swimming, and hopefully you guys can come out this way and do a grappling getaways out here. And that way I can train too.
We would love to. We've been talking about it.
Heck yeah. Well, we'll definitely be talking more about that for sure. Just again, I know we're jumping around a little bit. And again, this is why I'm doing this podcast, because this is just how these conversations go. And I think this is how we find out certain things that we wouldn't have otherwise had done. So again, that was your first step. Sometimes I get caught up on details in which it stops me from doing something, whether it be in that moment or for a really long time, and then it just haunts me. So
Right.
on another interview that I had, and you and I had also spoken about this, sometimes you just need to start. You just got to start somewhere. Again, if you're low on money, just start with the simple things of, again, figuring out that LLC, doing your research so that you can begin somehow, some way. And then the roadmap will not appear, but you'll start to see the pieces come out. I think you had referenced Frogger, the game, where you have to like find your way through like the cars and the logs and the crocodiles, and it's true. But you are, I don't know whether you're the frog or the person controlling the frog. There's always a support system, and in order to be able to try and find that route, as scary as it might be, take that first leap.
I agree. I think taking the leap is important. And I'm a big fan of calculated leaps and
Yep.
risk. And so I tend to be a journaler and a writer, and I even have like blank sketchbooks. And I'm just always planning everything out. Like I'm always writing list of things that I need to do, ideas. Every time I get an idea, I write it down. I do believe on like manifesting things into like existence. That was my idea, but now it's on paper. It exists. I might, address it at that time. I might come back to it, but I do find that like those ideas eventually evolve and somehow connect with each other. But I think it's really important to like plan things out. And like if you're starting a business, I like to do like Excel spreadsheets, my overhead expenses, my anticipated cost, potential loss, all of those kinds of things. So it's just really important to do a lot of planning. And I say underestimate a lot, right?
Yep.
As opposed to overestimate. And then you'll find yourself in a better position when you're underestimating what you're going to make.
Yeah. And you'll find out too, like when you just start to go in that direction, you're going to do more research. You're going to find out these answers and it becomes less intimidating. It's just like what we were saying with grappling getaways or anything else. Like when you come into something, you're not just, sometimes you might get thrown into the deep end, but you hope somebody is like there to be able to assist you. You know, you're not just getting thrown in and trying to survive by yourself. I mean, that is what entrepreneurship is, but you find your support system if you don't already have one. And again, it's not just getting thrown in and you don't have a plan. It's a progression. So like anything else, just start somewhere and then do your research, do your plan, like just like what April was saying, like, yes, plan it out, but don't let it stop you from going forward. Like start somewhere, just choose one thing.
The plan's not concrete. Like even when you write a business plan, right? So you write your business plan. Your business plan, like 90% of the time, is not going to represent what your business actually represents. It's just like when you go to school for something, you're like, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to do this. Yeah, your day is filled with things that you never did in college. You know what I'm saying? And so your business plan is going to be a really big comparison in that way. You're going to do things that you didn't realize that you were going to be doing. You're going to be making profits where you didn't think you were going to be making profits. You're going to be losing money where you had not anticipated losing money. So I think again, but it's really important to have that plan and be flexible, right? Some things will be non-negotiables, right? And the more that you evolve and the more that you understand what you expect from yourself and the value that you place on yourself, you're like, this is what I'm going to get regardless. Then you'll get to a spot where that's probably what you're going to get. But when you're building, a lot of times it's a goal. Like, I'd like to get this, but here's what I think I'll really get. And that's okay because I'm eventually going to get there. So I think having a growth mindset, but a very real mindset is important.
Which is probably how you became a world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, is that same mentality, that same work ethic that has transcended your life from 14 years old. You've kept that consistency, and as cheesy and, we hear it all the time, consistency is key. It is 100%. I think the problem therein lies is how to stay consistent when other things are happening. I mean, you're a mom of 4, you're a fiance, correct, right now? You said, okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I know I said wife.
I don't, the PC terms don't, like, I am his wife. He's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. The contract doesn't make us any different. We've been together forever.
There you go. And then you also have so many other things going on. You just ran this gala. You're still at your full-time job. You're still planning out all these things. And yes, you love planning and you love following through, which helps a lot. But there are some times when you're just like, man, I just want to sleep. Like, so how do you keep yourself going?
Coffee? No, I'm just kidding.
No, keep going. I'm trying to get sponsored by a coffee.
Coffee. Drink this coffee and have as much energy as I have. No,
there you go.
I really, honestly, every few weeks I do a real analysis of just my personal life. Where am I in regards to spending time with my family, including like my aging parents? Have I attended my kids' track meets and soccer games and school events? Have I put a lot of effort into my relationship with my fiance? Have I spent time with my dog? Do I greet her properly? Am I training enough? Right? If I'm competing, then my schedule will shift. Now I need to spend more time training, which means other things suffer. So I'm just constantly trying to shift everything back into some kind of balance, right? Some kind of homeostasis. And it's always shifting. It's always shifting. And I'm always going to be off on something. And I've just come to terms with that. And I don't quit. I'm not like, oh, I'm just a crappy mom this weekend. Or like, I'm a bad mom to my dog, or I like sucked at work this week. I didn't pay the kids enough attention at work, or that camp wasn't great, or I lost that competition. It's always like, well, the fact of the matter is I didn't put a lot of work into my training camp. That's why I lost. Next training camp, I've got to put more work in. G and I, we're not like as lovey-dovey as we normally are. Well, maybe it's because I've been gone for 7 weeks straight. I need to stop traveling and stay home. So I think just being really honest with yourself, even with us opening our business up soon, we've been having a lot of conversations and talking to a lot of mentors, right? And saying like, here's how we're going to save time so that we're not at odds with each other because we're both so stressed. We're not going to be
Absolutely.
answering phone calls from students 24 hours a day. We're not going to be doing all the financial piece. You need someone to do that you trust. So it's like allocation of time management, all these kinds of things become really paramount. And those are hard at first when you're trying to figure it all out, but it is a necessity in the long run for your mental health, for your personal well-being, for your relationships with your family.
Yeah. And I've discussed this with many other guests that I've had on this show as well. And honestly, and we've mentioned it too, is literally having that support system is imperative to growing your business. And your support system could be yourself, but it's always going to be someone or something else because you need it. That's how your business grows, through conversations, through people, through resources. And again, it's important for you to have that support system, but it's also important to give back to that support system that is giving you that energy. So again, just like April's saying, it's that balance of it all. And sometimes trying to balance it all can be overwhelming unless, like April again said, writing it down, having a plan, literally having it written out, looking at it is a big help. And that's something that I'm still learning. And I think I need to channel that into the moments that I start to feel a little overwhelmed, because sometimes you're just like, I feel overwhelmed. I just need to go do something to reset. And I agree that yes, you should, but don't let that reset take like days. Like, or, maybe sometimes you do need days, maybe you need that vacation, but not every time, because you're going to get overwhelmed probably quite a lot unless you just break it down and have those moments of being able to do that. So support system is important, and your kids and your parents, your partner, G, and your dog, they all understand what you're trying to build as well. Yes.
Yes, they do.
And they've been
And
pretty supportive.
oh my gosh, I couldn't do anything that I do unless I had the support system that I have. And that's inclusive of all of them and my friends and my work. My principal even understands, like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in Mexico,
Yeah.
and it's like, sometimes you have a boss that's not flexible and they're like, well, that's unfortunate for you. And I have people that understand that, like, I'm working really hard to pursue my passions and dreams, but and I tell them, when I'm at work, you're going to get 120% of me. And that's all I can say, but like, I need some time off when I'm doing things for my other business or when I'm competing. I hope that you understand that. And so far I've been really blessed with bosses that are like, no, I get it. Like, when you're here, you're busting your behind, go do you. So that's a blessing. And I also want to say to people out there, I think that it's really important to have a couple of people in your life that are not yes men. They're not, wow, April, that's the best idea. Wow, that was a really great tournament. Wow, that was this. I think that you really need people that are honest with you, that said, you didn't really work hard for this tournament. You
Yeah.
didn't. Like, I love you, but you didn't, or April, you've been running yourself ragged. Why don't you take a break?
Yeah.
Or that's a bad business idea. I think you should charge more for that. So you're going to need people that disagree with you because they're going to make you grow. And if you don't have those people on your team, as frustrating as it might be, you need one of them.
Yeah. But I think it's also important too, within that they be the people that also provide the helpful criticism, not just
That's
the
right.
people that we've had in our lives that are like, you shouldn't do that, or that can't be done. Because then it just fuels us to do
Right.
exactly what they said. So it needs to be somebody that, like you said, it's like, listen, you could have trained harder. You could have, and here's, just my 2 cents about it. And then it makes you think. You might get defensive right off the bat. At least I would. But then you're like, they're right. I need to do this, this, and that. And that's how this is going to change. And you're right. You definitely need to have those people within your life.
You need to be really self-reflective, and you need to be able to be really honest with yourself. I know G and I were having a conversation. He says, Jocko says that all the time. He's
Yep.
like, you need, I was venting to him about a meeting I was at or something, where I felt like the person that was running the meeting already knew what they were going to do, and all of our opinions, and we were all experts in our own right, and we all had very valid points. But at the end of the meeting, they're like, all right, well, I'm going to do this. Why have a meeting if you're not going to listen to everybody's perspectives? And he had mentioned to me that Jocko says, regardless of whether you believe with, agree with what these people are saying, or, but it's really important to take the best from what you've heard everybody say and at least try to implement it if you think it's what's best. And I think that makes a great leader. So even if you're leading a business and there's somebody that respectfully disagrees with you, but it is best for the business, it's really wise that you listen.
Absolutely.
It's
I
not
mean,
about whether you like them or not.
yeah. And that's the very art and concept of Jeet Kune Do. That's what I have my black belt in as well. And it's just the whole philosophy is, there's these varying different arts. Like there's Muay Thai, there's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, or just Jiu-Jitsu in general, because we take from also like Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. So there's many different arts that come in that: Savate, French kickboxing, trapping from Wing Chun, all these different things. And there's so many more, but we're not doing the entirety of those arts. We're doing the things that make sense for the curriculum that we have, that are going to be best suited. And those, again, just like our business plan, it's going to be ever evolving if it's a good one and if it's a good program, because times are changing, life is changing. But again, you can learn the entirety of an art, but you need to make sure that you take what's useful from it, or else it might not be useful at all or viewed as useful. So again, like you're saying, in these meetings, you can go through this whole meeting, but again, you don't have to focus on necessarily the whole thing. Make sure you focus on the parts that are going to work for you.
That's
so
right.
Going with that, with growing your businesses, what has been the most difficult part for you, you think, when you started Grappling Getaways and also just trying to create this partner business via Jiu-Jitsu? What's been the most difficult?
I think for Grappling Getaways, it was just figuring out like branding. Some people are also really uncomfortable with like, how do I design a logo?
Yeah.
Like, and then you want to change your logo and you think it's cool to have 5. And then you actually speak to like a brand agent and they're like, no. You get one logo. It should be clean. It should be crisp. It needs to represent you. And I was like, oh, okay. So I don't have that expertise. So then you're like, who knows how to make a logo? And like, so eventually you decide on your logo. And, it was advised to me that you put a logo on everything that you give somebody, you put your logo on it because you want it to eventually be like readily identifiable. Like, oh, I've seen that somewhere,
Absolutely.
So that's a big piece of advice for anybody that's trying to get ready to launch their brand or their business. So I didn't realize how important a logo was. And then going along with the logo, just how to advertise for yourself. How do I get my name out there? How do we get Grappling Getaways name out there? And they were kind of 2 different entities. There was like April Parks, the athlete, and then there was Grappling Getaways, but there was like no connection, right? For both. Because when you saw Grappling Getaways, you didn't think April Parks. And when you saw April Parks, you didn't think Grappling Getaways.
The association.
I don't even think there's an association for some people still today.
Yeah.
Because I'll run into people and they're like, Grappling Getaways, I've seen that everywhere. Like, oh, you own that? You run it? I'm like, yeah. Here we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, just identifying your brands and like your marketing. Marketing becomes so paramount, and you don't really realize how good some people are at it. And you've got to respect people that know how to brand, people that know how to market, people that know how to utilize social media and maximize it and maximize SEO and, which is your website traffic and all that stuff. Like, it's really important.
Yeah. And important to research. So if you guys are hearing this and you're like, I don't know what any of that is, guess what? I didn't either. But once again, just starting somewhere. Okay. Needing a base, like a website, right? Just start building that, see which one works for you. Just again, research, as annoying as it can be, but this is for you. And just going back to kind of branding, it's funny because somebody once said to me, you are your brand. You represent your brand. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right, isn't it? Like, obviously, as a personal trainer and as a martial arts instructor, yes. But we talked about this too. You want your business to run smoothly, whether you're there or not. But that doesn't mean that you still aren't your brand. It means that you are at the center of it, but it is building around you as well. So when we are putting so many other people first and we want it to be a separate entity, we aren't realizing that people like it and they go to it because they like what we have to say. They like what we have to share. And again, it's not to be selfish about it. It's just like, that's why we created this, so that we can share what we know and the knowledge that we have and that we've earned, and that we can create a community. But yes, it does start with us. So we have to make that known, and we have to make people understand that, it is us, but it's all of us too.
Yeah. And I want to say that there's like, just again, to provide some guidance and advice for people.
Yes, please.
There are logo makers out there where you can, input if you're struggling to make one, you're like sketching one on your own. And
Mhm.
anybody listening that's actually done this is laughing. I know you are, because we've all done it. And I'm like a stick figure with a black belt. And I'm like, come to Grappling Getaways camps.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
And I show my engineering friend this, and she's like, April, please burn that. And that's the honest friend.
Yep.
She goes, never do this again. I'm going to help you. Thank you. But
That's how you find people sometimes. It's just like, here you go. It's like,
that's exactly right. But there's websites where you can just basically say, like, here's like what we represent. We are, we're artists, or we are a painting company, and you print it all in there and you put like your name in there, and it will generate different ideas, and you can keep generating as many times as you need until maybe one, suits you, or you can pay them to
yeah.
design your own. And I really think that they're not that expensive. I know we messed around with some for VN Jiu-Jitsu, ultimately ended up designing our own.
Oh,
Yeah, and we actually really like it. So that's
okay,
another
good.
thing. But there are websites out there for you to do that, in regards to securing your own website domain and having, just your own personal place to design for people to go to on the web. It seems more intimidating than it actually is. If you just go to like a GoDaddy or whatever and you secure your website, it's kind of fun. They've made them so user friendly that it should not be intimidating. Again, it's more or less just starting the process. And then once
Yep.
you're there, you're going to be like, wow, I'm like a website designer. Now there's levels to this game.
Yes.
There's levels. I'm
Yep.
not going to lie. Right. But just starting it is not as hard as it seems.
Yes. And I would suggest also, this is something that I had to learn and also accept, like the website, number one, yes, pay for that. It is integral because you need to have a base and somewhere for people to go, especially in today's day where we're trying to have less paper trails. Your website is going to be important. Sometimes it's still good to have paper trails. Like I have a business card, and the place where I went to for my logo was actually one that my aunt had used for her real estate business. So they had suggested it to me. I think it was a logo glow, or I'll put that in the description as well. And this is like, although they did allow me to make a couple of logos, because I would not take no for an answer. I was like, I'm going to use them for different things, so I need that. So one of them is like on the sticker here, the Tasco Fit Martial Arts and Fitness. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, you could see it. You can also see it on my website, tascofit.com. But again, like I have different things for different uses. But my point is, pay for the website. Yes, pay for your logo if you don't know how to design it. It's just going to save you time and money, because time is money. But the one thing that I still don't have for myself that I know that a lot of people have, but the money that I would have to spend on it right now, I'm still building. So I don't see it as an integral part, is a domain for your email. I still use Gmail. So it's tascofit@gmail.com. And that's okay for now. There are certain,
I still use mine as well, even though I do have a domain, and I have so many people like, April, you need to switch it. But and I'm going to tell everybody else out there too, there are like Google Docs and like different things people have shared with me. And I'm just like, look, I'm 40. I am still not like tech savvy. I can't even open what you send me. I'm just going to do it this way.
Yeah.
You can always do it your own way. And if it works for you.
Yeah. And again, it's just something that I saw as right now an unnecessary payment. As much as I would like to have, an @tascofit.com, it's not necessary right now. The name is right there. It's the first thing that they see, and that's how you contact me.
Exactly. I mean, like there's other options. There's options for them to do SEO for you. There's options to have like a shop online. Like when we were having like a meeting of the Grappling Getaways founders, we we're like, should we open a shop? And it was like, it's like, I don't know, $8 or $9 a month or something. But at the time we're like just trying to make a profit. And I'm like, absolutely never. We're not paying that much money a month,
Yeah.
And so just now we're in a spot where we're like, you know what? We should maybe open a shop. So it's like, take your time, ensure your value and ensure your profit. And then if you decide it's a necessity, then go ahead and do it. I think securing your logo and like your domain should really cost you no more than like $250 to $350. Like you literally will be able to do, and that's an overestimate, I think.
You mean like monthly, yearly for that?
Yearly, like for a year, unless you want to secure your domain for longer. There's like different options where you can purchase it for like 2 years, 3 years or whatever. But just to start out, it could be a really small investment.
Yeah. And a lot of the websites that I use Wix for mine. A lot of the websites will have those like as a part of their services. It also doesn't mean you have to use them either, because
Right.
sometimes there are cheaper options too. So then, yes, of course, always do your research anyway, but they do
Yes.
try to make it easier for you, which is good for them because they're trying to turn a profit on that as well and just kind of have it all in one place. But again, you don't necessarily have to use those. Um, so we're just kind of winding down with time. So April, I just want to go back to, I just want to ask you a question. So if there was one thing you want our listeners to glean from our conversation today, what would that be?
It would be to really take a look at these 20 and 30-year-olds that are visionaries, that are thinking differently than when we were younger, like 40 and 50-year-olds, and even some people in their 30s, that understand that they can create the life that they want and the career that they want. There's something very special about now, right? Like the
Yeah.
2020s, where I think the pandemic really catapulted us into this too, showing us that like we could work from home and we could create our own incomes, and that our ideas could manifest into a career of passion. We don't have to go and grind for somebody else from a 9 to 5, or an 8 to 4, whatever your hours are. We were really taught as kids to go to school, go to college, get a good job, work for somebody else. And I really feel like we are changing to where we know that that does not have to be the case, that we are able to pursue our passions and our dreams. And when we do that, we're going to be able to make the money that goes along with the effort that accompanies what we've put into that dream. And so I do think that those two go hand in hand, effort and outcome. I'm a true believer in capitalism. And although I do know there's barriers, there's definitely more barriers for some people. There's more barriers for women. There's more barriers for minorities. There's barriers for people with disabilities. And so it is more difficult for them to obtain those things. But what never changes with those variables is if you keep trying, you're going to get what you want. And so I say, if you're thinking about opening a business, if you're thinking about pursuing your dream, take the chance and see where it goes. Plant a seed, right? And watch it grow. And not everything is going to be successful off the bat. Everything takes time. Anything worth having takes a lot of time. And put your effort into it. And I think people will be surprised at the beautiful product that you're able to grow.
Yeah. And definitely consistency and accountability for sure is within what you're saying. And also
Yep.
just if something doesn't work, we've been talking about this. And again, I can't say it enough, like the art and concept of Jeet Kune Do. If one thing doesn't work, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to change everything. You can just change that component so it can make a better combination for you and for what's going to work. But it also means don't just try it once and give up on it. Plug away at it. If it really isn't working for you, adapt and change. And martial arts can definitely help you with that. Whether you train now or it's not something you were ever interested in, it might be now. So granted, this is all about entrepreneurship, but it's definitely made its way into my life, just learning from martial arts, learning how to adapt even more, and just learning again. I know we keep saying it, but getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. That could just mean in the smallest way of just like, you don't like confrontation or, and sometimes you need to confront things. It doesn't mean you have to come at it like aggressively or anything else. It just means you need to just take a breath and just follow through and just kind of face it. And there's so many beautiful things that are on the other side of fear that you just have to figure out how to kind of calm yourself down and get on the other side. And martial arts is definitely a really great way to help you with that, whether you train with myself in Jeet Kune Do, which incorporates a lot of different things, or you're near April and you can train with her and G as well. Just give that a try if you haven't already. And if not, hey, maybe it's not for you right now, but just definitely keep plugging away, warriors, because we're all warriors, whether you train martial arts or not. We're entrepreneurs, and you have to be some type of warrior to open up your own business and run it. So just keep fighting for yourself and what your dream is and what you believe in. And April, I can't thank you enough for your time and just for the opportunity to be able to talk to you today and have you share your experiences. So thank you so much, and I really hope to train with you sometime soon.
Thank you for having me. And you better believe we're coming to Hawaii at some point.
Perfect. Well, mahalo and aloha.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.